I heard Taylor.
Oh, yeah.
Is everything looking good?
Okay, my clock says 10:30, so let's get started. First of all, welcome to everyone for joining us this morning, a conversation about the missing middle. For those of you who aren't familiar with NoCo Housing Now, we are a volunteer group of folks from across the region that have come together to really try to bring material, education, opportunities for dialogue to help really address some of the issues that, well, an important issue that's facing all of our communities, and that is the cost and availability of housing. And so NoCo Housing Now has been around for since 2017, and we hold these quarterly events, bringing in speakers and subject matter experts that can help us look at different issues as it relates to housing and housing policy. And today we're going to be talking about missing middle, which has been a topic that has bubbled up to the surface over the last, I'd say, probably 5 to 7 years. And I think that there's some maybe still an element of our community that doesn't quite understand what that is and how you would go about doing it, and truly what is the benefits to our community that would become of addressing the types of housing that were really prevalent prior to the 1950s in terms of neighborhood character. So if you look at older neighborhoods, you often will see a commercial property next to a single family residential, and 2 doors down, you've got a small apartment building, maybe a duplex or a fourplex around the corner. We saw a lot of that really started to go away with the car culture in the 1950s. And so what we've seen since then is an abundance of zone districts throughout communities all across the country, and not just here in Fort Collins, or here in Northern Colorado, I should say, but across the country, where you have really single family zone areas, detached single family zone districts, and then separate from that, high density, where you'll see more apartment buildings. And what we don't see being built much at all is anything in between that. So we want to explore that today. And we're very fortunate to have a couple of speakers with us today that are, in fact, subject matter experts. And so I'll start with Landon Hoover, who is the president of Hartford Homes, a builder developer in Northern Colorado. And then we also have Terry Barnard, who is the multifamily production and outreach coordinator for Colorado Housing Finance Authority. And for those of you who aren't familiar, CHFA is a state entity. It's not part of the state government. It's a separate entity, but they provide an abundance of financing options for both commercial, residential customers, and they are very active in this space. And I'll let Terry explain further what tools they have available. But again, hopefully you'll welcome our two speakers today. And before I turn it over to the conversation, go through a couple of things. First of all, I want to thank all of our sponsors, and hopefully you saw that on the screen. But we have, again, I'll bring that up here in a little bit at the end of the program, along with our contact information. But we do thank our sponsors for helping us with this program. And for those of you who may not still be quite familiar with Zoom, hopefully by now we all are, but we are going to do this as kind of a dialogue fashion. And so we invite all of you to pose questions. And if you would, when you do that, please go down to the bottom of your screen under the reactions button and hit raise hand. That allows me to keep track of who's in the queue to ask a question in the order in which they were you raised your hand. It's easier for me. If you have any difficulty with that, feel free to use the chat function. And again, for any of you who don't have your mute on, please make sure that any distracting noise in the background, you either keep your laptop on mute or again, close doors, what have you, so that we don't get interference background noise. So with that, I'm going to just maybe start off and ask Landon to, number one, just give us a little background on who Hartford Homes is, but then also talk to us a little bit about what missing middle is and where your company actually plays in that space. So Landon, please.
Yeah, thanks, Joe, for organizing this, and thank you everyone for joining the conversation. I think it's a very important one, so excited to be a part of it. I guess in the simplest definition of missing middle from my perspective is 80 to say 120% AMI. I'm sure you could flex that slightly on either end, but I think it is a differentiation from true affordable products, which usually start and subsidized in some form or fashion with access to government money or other subsidies to make those affordable products happen. Usually that starts at that 80% of area median income threshold and below. So I think missing middle is more market rate driven product that it doesn't receive subsidies, but fits that gap of a first-time home buyer. And I also think we should expand that to the rental side of it. But it's someone who may lifestyle-wise want something different than an apartment, but it's still affordable.
Thanks.
There's some construction happening, so I might pause so it's not loud for everyone.
Thanks. Terry, I'll ask you to jump in here with CHFA and just talk a little bit about where CHFA positions itself in this conversation about missing middle and really what the organization as a whole, what you're seeking to accomplish.
Absolutely. And Joe, I'll take a mission-based nonprofit for 400. Thank you. No, thank you everyone for having me here today, having us here. CHFA historically has been an organization that invests in low-income housing, and that's generally 60% of area median and below. I do want to acknowledge that Julie Bruin, who's the executive director of Housing Catalyst in Fort Collins, she is on our board. So it's great to have her representation from Northern Colorado. a few years ago, when rents really started skyrocketing and sort of created this middle income space that really what didn't exist until a few years ago, when realizing that as Landon alluded to, those that are earning 80% of area median and up to about 120 were in a space that really they couldn't afford market rents, but at the same time they made too much to qualify for low income, more like subsidized housing, or tax credit housing, those things that are, there's lots of tools, both federal and state, to kind of help support. And so we kind of went on a mission to figure out how can we play in this space? What can we do to help the market? Because that's really our mission, is to finance affordable housing and economic development, home ownership wise, rental housing wise, and then supporting small businesses. And so the model that sort of came into our knowledge and our awareness was really, it is sort of a market, more like a market rate type deal. But because the rents are a little bit lower, if you're talking 80 to 100% area median, you have private equity as you do in a market deal. You have a large amount of senior debt, but then you have this little gap piece that's generally publicly funded, so to speak. And so that's generally in the $2 to $5 million range, and that's a great place for us to because of our balance sheet money that we set aside every year, a portion of our net income, to then relend into the community. And so we could use that, to fill these gaps on some of these projects across the state. And so to date, we've done, I believe, 6 deals, and we've got a pipeline, a robust pipeline of other deals as well. So it's been very well received. It works well with products that are out there, including Fannie and Freddie, that require a 10% participation from a sort of a governmental entity, is what they call it, and so it fits well with that, and it's very flexible in how we structure it because it's our own money.
Perfect. Well, thanks, Terry. So let's put that into perspective. Landon, hopefully the construction noise in the background has subsided a little bit. So let's talk about that. So Terry, you're talking about multifamily rental is the heavily subsidized low income housing, and then you've got this piece in the middle that requires a little bit of subsidy from some sources, but then it also relies a lot on straight commercial type financing, in terms of you have to have so much equity, you have to have so much debt. Landon, put that into perspective for us, if you would, as it relates to more of the type product that you're developing, where that is not necessarily an apartment building, but it looks something more like, again, attached housing and smaller envelopes, so you end up with a smaller unit. Do you develop any middle income rental, or is it strictly ownership?
So we do both, and you're seeing maybe a surge in some of the single family for rent opportunities that serve the middle income in a true single family detached. So not just from a detached perspective, but yeah, I might share real quick a couple products that we're excited about to maybe put this in perspective. Can everyone see that? Good?
Yes.
Okay. This is a product we're extremely excited about. The first place we'll be building this is actually in Fort Collins, in our Bloom community, which is off of Mulberry. And this product took a lot of innovation. This actually took 6 years to get approved in the city of Fort Collins. Not this product specifically, but the PUD, which is basically a land use code amendment that applies just to our project, to get it to allow this type of product. And what's special about this, what you're seeing is product that's 1,000 square feet roughly up to 1,500 square feet, but is truly detached. And then I'll show the land plan here in a second. So this lives, I think, a lot better than a townhome. And the other real nuance that we found here versus a townhome is when you attach something, you have to have an HOA because there's common walls and common elements. And the cost of operating HOAs, both from a management perspective and then from an insurance perspective in particular, have just ballooned. And so a townhome product, while there's more density and some shared costs, and you would think drive towards a lower monthly payment, in the end, what we were seeing is that they were bumping up against traditional single-family products from a monthly payment perspective for people. Most of that, again, coming from the HOA. So what we tried to do to innovate with this type of product to better control that monthly payment and actually be able to serve that 80 to 120% AMI was detaching that. So we don't have the HOA, but really having a similar lifestyle and scale of product to a townhome. But again, that type of innovation, and you'll see this theme from me today, our current system, whether that be land use code or building code, aren't set up to allow for, encourage, or adapt quickly to innovations like this that ultimately serve that missing middle. So from my perspective, that's been the 20-year theme that has really created this gap and made this product be removed from the market, is that our codes, the rules of the game really don't allow for it, or it takes 6 years to go through the process. In Fort Collins, a community where this is one of the top strategic priorities, and it still took that much time to get this product through the process to be able to deliver on this. And so there's something broken there that is keeping the market from delivering these things. And we're really excited to be delivering that. But I think to truly address it, it can't be a 6-year process, because there just aren't many companies that will take that type of investment horizon or care to try to innovate in this way, and they'll just follow the simpler path out of expediency. And I think that's the result, or the state we're in right now is the result of that.
Great. So, and again, I just want to make sure everyone knows that if you do have questions, feel free to raise your hand at any time. Otherwise, I'll just keep going. But Landon, so what you're showing us here really looks like a greenfield type development, correct?
That is correct. Yes.
And how easy is this to adapt to existing neighborhoods?
It's challenging. I'll jump to slide here that shows kind of our land plan on this. It's not perfectly showing what I was hoping to do, but these are 26-foot wide lots. And so when you start to think about utilities and you have water, you have sewer, you have gas, electric. We're actually going all electric and don't have gas here in this scenario. But we do have non-potable water. So you end up having 4 or 5 utilities that you have to bring into every one of these houses, and they all have separations from each other. It ends up getting really challenging to do this, especially if you're working with legacy or historical infrastructure, and you're not pre-planning it in advance in a greenfield scenario. So it does become challenging, and I think unfortunately, it just becomes more expensive to try to adapt product like this or ADUs. This product also does allow us to pull ADUs above the garages. You can see that it's kind of modeled up here. If you can see my cursor there, it's kind of hard to see, but it gets pretty hard to adapt to infill type situations. And I think that's probably in general, even in the multifamily space, you see a lot of that infill drive a lot more expensive costs because you're reworking infrastructure.
Right. And so Terry, what's been your experience with Chaffa? You have more of a statewide perspective, but are you seeing this type of product coming to market in a general sense? And again, this greenfield type development, I think you said you've financed 6 projects, but not knowing how many are rental, how many are ownership. But are you seeing trends where where greenfield development is taking on more of this style of development, and to what extent are you seeing any of that taking place within existing neighborhoods?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm not on mute, am I? Oh, that's good.
No.
Panic moment. You know, what I do mostly is with rentals. So the 6 projects that I mentioned, you know, are rental projects around the state. I mean, the first one was in Denver, but we've done them in Keystone, Steamboat, Gypsum, one in Estes Park as well, and continuing to work on that. We have just gotten into financing single-family construction for smaller type developments. And there's one actually that is going in at 25th and Emporia in the Aurora area of Denver, kind of by the Stanley Marketplace. So that's within an existing neighborhood, but it's you know, it's an empty lot, a lot that's been empty for a number of years. And I think there have been a couple of tax credit applications to, you know, build rental housing there that just haven't gotten off the ground. So this one, the developer actually uses a modular product and makes it's a similar, very similar type of product as what Landon was showing there. But it's modular, it's 2-story, and it's basically duplexes. So he's putting 6 duplexes, 12 units on this particular site, and it's a pretty efficient model. He's got it, the developer has it down as far as cost and delivery and those things. So it's great to see that happening. And you know, modulars I think is a good new technology as well. It's just, it seems like it's there's varying opinions on the pros and cons of it. And so, but we certainly like to see it, you know, happening within neighborhoods as well as adding new units to, you know, to greenfields that are around the state.
Okay, great. So I've got a quick question here from Cecilia. Landon, this was directed to you. What's the targeted demographic for the development that you were showing us?
Yeah, it does span a number of demographics for sure, but it's probably less your traditional family with a 2-parent, 2 kids and a dog target. So this would be really everything from first-time buyers, young couples, single parents with kids. They are, you know, on the smallest end, it's a 2-bedroom, 1.5 bath. But on the largest end of there, we do have a 4-bedroom, 1,500 square foot plan. So it can serve all those demographics. You know, we're integrating this into, and we also have main floor masters to serve older demographics there. And so we see a broad appeal, and it's mostly based on affordability and maybe less on lifestyle, although we are really trying to integrate this into communities that have the amenities within biking distance to open up the possibilities for a lot of different interests and lifestyle desires, I guess. But it's intended to be a lot more broad-based than maybe more traditional missing middle products of condos, which we can talk about later as challenges with those. But this is supposed to have a closer feel to the single family lifestyle that I think a lot of people desire, but often can't attain.
And what is that, if you would maybe bring this back up, that screen that shows the layout of a block, and maybe give us some perspective on what that looks like in terms of the number of units here versus what you might be able to put in what you've been previously doing with the detached single family. Can you give us just some perspective on what the differential is?
Yeah, absolutely. Real quick before I run through those, weak densities is how we talk about that, and number of units per acre is usually the common metric there. So I can run through those, what those are for different products, but you could probably get this more dense. But what we, in our layout here, what you're seeing on the those two is all of these homes have about a 26-foot by 20-foot private backyard. So from our perspective, that's where you are entertaining and hosting guests that you want, but then they all back to this shared green space back here. That's roughly about a half an acre. And that's where you run your dog, and that's where you play catch. And that's more of a shared space than a private. As well, this community and communities that we're putting it in have larger scale parks that are all within a short walk. And so, but we're consolidating those amenities, whether that be the green space behind houses or into larger scale parks in order to get greater density of housing in other places. So this product runs at probably 10 to 12 units per acre. What's amazing is this actually ends up being more dense than most of our townhome products, which run in an 8 to 10. So not only are we single family detached, we have a lower monthly payment because we've avoided the HOA costs. And then there's a lot of building code things, whether that be fire separations and things like that make townhomes more expensive. So this product to us seems like a no-brainer in replacing the townhome segment and better serving that missing middle. But 8 to 10 for townhomes, we're seeing 10 to 12 on this product. A condo density can be anywhere from probably 12 to 20 units per acre, and that's pretty similar. That'd be 3-story condos once you get into that 20 DUs per acre. And more traditional single family front load ends up in that generally that 4 DUs per acre. So yeah, hopefully that answers the question.
Great. Well, Landon, you're a popular guy because now we've got everyone wants to know. First of all, I'll start. Let's see. I think. Oh, Judy, you had a question about whether or not you have an estimated price range on that type of product that you were showing us.
Yeah, that will be likely in the 4s, 4 to 500,000 range. It's not fully complete bidding, but it's really going to play in the exact same, I'd say, pricing band as a townhome. So what you're seeing those, which right now is, it's hard to imagine, but is even 400 to 550. But again, the difference being that monthly payment, which is ultimately what matters to most families, is lower and maybe would equate with a 350 to 450 type product.
Okay, great. And just to keep that ball rolling, Audra, you had a question about the timeline. So maybe you can expand on that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, for Bloom specifically, this Mulberry community, we start development actually next month in December. It just got approved. Like I said, after a fun 6 years and a few years off of my life. But we got it through the process and really excited for that. It will deliver lots in end of 23 and really start vertical construction thereafter. And that product is actually also going to be a similar product we're doing in partnership with Habitat. They'll build that product in a true affordable sense as well as kind of a market rate sense serving that missing middle. So we're really excited for that. Great.
And then David Eisenbraun had a question about parking, the ratios specifically, and where it gets to the neighborhood.
Yeah, I can pull that back up, but it actually exceeds Fort Collins or Windsor. I know David's familiar with both of those parking requirements. Every unit does have a single car detached garage. You'll see there's a walkway that kind of comes, and each one of these has a little gate in their backyard that comes through to enter your house from the back as well. And then there's guest parking in the alleys as well as on street out front. So in our PUD, where we can modify and get those approved code standards, parking is actually one we didn't choose to modify, and we're actually meeting all of those standards.
And just for reference, what are those parking standards?
Now you're getting beyond.
Okay, never mind. I'll ask Sue that question and answer afterwards.
There you
go. Gary Floyd also had a question for you relative to utilities. In terms of trying to coordinate with different jurisdictions and code changes that come as you're going through this design process? Because I think you mentioned it was 6 years.
Yeah. This one was particularly interesting or challenging just because we have the city as the approving agency, and then we have Box Elder Sewer or Sanitation District, and then we had Elko Water District. So where if we were in a different part of the city, it would be working all with the city, and that coordination probably, although not always, but probably would be easier working with one entity. And so in this case, we had to bring those three entities together to really analyze and talk through it. And they were incredibly collaborative. And while it took time, that actually wasn't the hardest part in this process. But both Box Elder and Elko have helped us innovate in this, doing shared services. So we have one service coming off for water and sewer, and then we tee it. They're individually metered, but we do that on one of the lot lines. And then on the other lot line, we have a sanitary sewer tee. And then we took non-pot through the rear of these yards, non-potable irrigation, sorry. And then we have electric services, and I actually don't remember if the electric is in the rear or the front, but it took a lot of coordination. And I think anytime you have innovation, it does take that coordination and planning. And fortunately, all of these districts really worked with us. We're also bringing this to Loveland or to Windsor immediately, and Windsor has been really good to work with as well to try to understand how they can support and bring this product to them. It all takes time because we're reworking a code in a standard that's been entrenched in a lot of people's mind for a long time.
Great. And Sue had a question as well about walkability. Can you just talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I wish I had a slide overall of maybe I can work on pulling that up here, but yeah, it varies community to community where we're taking this product. Again, we're trying to scale this, knowing how significant that missing middle truly is. One community isn't going to solve this. And, I think that the tools that CHAFA have are incredible and very necessary, but they can't fulfill the entirety of this need. So there has to be scalable solutions that go beyond government subsidized. That's got to be one of our tools, but we have to look at all of these tools, and I think how we do it at scale. So all that said, it'll be different communities that have different walkability, but for Bloom specifically, Bloom has a commercial district down on Mulberry, and these products, which here I'll share now. I think I got it pulled up. You guys see that?
Yeah.
So the cottage product, at least initially, is sitting right here. This is Mulberry, Timberline, and Vine on the north, I-25 on your east. And then we have worked on it's called our pedestrian spine. It's this 40-foot area that has a kind of our premier feature, I guess, a really neat walking spine. That's also our big pollinator corridor, and connects down into this commercial area, and creates that walkability here down into those neighborhood amenities and services, as well as this is a affordable LIHTC, low income tax housing credit, 360 affordable units. This will be market rate apartments. And then those cottages I've shared, we also have condos here, and then traditional single family. So we're really hoping to serve the entire spectrum of housing in this Bloom community, all with that core spine, creating that walkability.
And again, just for perspective, how many acres are we talking about for this whole development?
This is right around 240,
Okay.
And it'll be roughly 1,800 units.
Okay, thank you. So Terry, actually, this is a good place to get you back in the conversation. The question from Jamie was to Landon regarding solar orientation, but Terry, I think this would be an opportunity for you to weigh in as to what kinds of features, amenities do you as CHAFA look for in terms of the types of products that you're looking to finance? Do you have requirements in terms of solar and other green features to the product?
We do. Most of what we finance on the lending side, which is where I work, involves probably 90% of it involves tax credit deals. And so the QAP, the allocation plan for the credits, requires that the projects meet, one of there's choices on which green standard they meet. It could be enterprise green communities, could be a LEED certification, and some others. But each one of them has to have certain features around that to get points, for those. And a lot of it now is tailored towards resident air quality and health. Health has really come into the green space, but the developments can basically kind of choose different elements to include with the project to get points for their certification and such. But we do have requirements for certain amenities that have to be included at the project, including like units with dishwashers. I mean, we don't really want to see units without dishwashers anymore, and that's sometimes challenging with existing properties, especially when they have small kitchens, to try to get dishwashers in there. So
interesting. So Landon, could you just touch on that real quick? Did you have solar orientation as one of your criteria in that product, or in the actual whole development, I guess?
Yes, and that's a standard element of Fort Collins's land use code, is the solar orientation piece there. As well, in our PUD, we modified a number of standards to increase and enable solar orientation. We are going all electric for a large portion of this. And so solar becomes a pretty important component to maintaining affordable monthly costs on the electric side as well. But we were able to modify certain roof lines on multifamily when they create a better canvas, for lack of a better word, or a better surface or space to have really efficient solar. So the PedCore LIHTC apartment deal, the affordable apartment, they are utilizing a lot of those modified roof standards to do solar, and they're actually going to likely produce somewhere between 400 and 600 kilowatts of solar on their 360 units alone. So yeah, I think a lot of municipalities are open to that and modifying those standards to accomplish that. And then certainly it's a big part, I know, of a lot of LIHTC applications as they go in.
And Joe, to kind of circle back to what Chaffa has in our QAP, our allocation plan as well, one of our guiding principles is to contribute towards Colorado meeting its 100% renewable energy goals by 2040 and the other goals that are out there. And so one of them is going all electric on projects. There's no mandate, but certainly things are working in that direction. So passive solar design, taking advantage of the sun and its relative position in the sky throughout the seasons, is also one of the point categories in those green communities and LEED certification programs as well. So yeah, a lot of that going on.
Thank you. So another question, I believe it was Judy that just wanted both of your opinion on how is the passage of Prop 123 going to impact both of you? And I know Terry Chaffa is been identified as being one of the conduits for delivering those funds. Can you talk about that a little bit? And then Landon, maybe you can just chime in on where you think that interfaces with the type of product that you're developing.
Yeah, and I'll start on that, Joe. I mean, I think we're excited, about the passage of 123. As you alluded to, it takes 1/10 of 1% of the state income tax revenue and directs it to an affordable housing fund. That's split 40% to the Division of Housing, which is our sister agency, part of the state itself, and that'll go towards some other programs, homeownerships, programs supporting those experiencing homelessness or at risk, and then also local planning capacity. 60% of it will go to actually OEDIT, who will then contract with Chaffa to administer those funds. And there's stipulations on what they have to go for, but land banking, affordable housing equity program, and then a concessionary debt program. But what we're excited about is all of those, but the fact that we can also bring more resources to make these deals work, because construction costs have been, as most people know, have been skyrocketing over recent years. And this year, interest rates have really gone up significantly. And so that's impacting deals and their abilities to get done. And so, to date, we have some subordinate debt programs, but they're priced a little bit higher, I think, than where they probably need to be. And so these funds, I think, allow us to put in some equity perhaps, and, some very, very low cost debt. And so we're excited about that.
And do you have I don't recall off the top of my head, do you recall how much of those funds were earmarked towards the missing middle sector?
I don't know that there was anything. There may have been. It may be within those. There's percentages within those three areas that we have to use it, but I don't recall anything specific to that. But certainly we have other money that's coming down, from other bills that I can speak to as well if you.
Oh yes, please do, because there are other bills that.
Yeah, absolutely. So out of this last legislative session, Senate Bill 22-146 was passed, and it appropriates $25 million towards our middle income access program, which is what I talked about, at the beginning, which is basically where we're providing gap financing, between 2 and 6 million to help those projects get done. And it helps expand the program around the state. So the governor's office was excited by what we were doing in the middle income program, and allocated us some more money to do that. So we're excited to have that. Also, Senate Bill 232 created the Middle Income Housing Authority, which is it's a new statewide authority, with a board that's appointed by the governor and such. So very similar to CHAFA, and that's their sole mission is to help with the creation of middle income and workforce housing. The difference with their model is it's a different structure. Ours is typically the senior debt, the public funding that we're putting in, and private equity. The Middle Income Housing Authority is basically it's a model that uses all debt. It's all debt finance. There's no equity in it, and it's mostly governmental purpose bonds that I think that finance that. So lots of new resources for this space, which I think is exciting given the need.
Terrific. And Landon, I'll let you respond to that as well. And then we're fortunate enough to have Natalie from the Division of Housing who can probably talk a little bit about this as well. So Landon?
I'm really excited for what Prop 123 will do from a long-term perspective impacting land use code. I think a part of 123 really requires municipalities to commit to increasing affordable housing. And I think it's at 3% a year, if I remember right. And then in order to have access to the funds, and then they also have to create a fast track process that allows affordable housing to work through their land use code on an accelerated fashion. And so I think as municipalities, hopefully, and Fort Collins actually have just done this in a great way with their revised land use code, not only addressing the process as best they can for affordable housing, but also streamlining the process overall. And again, if we want to scale this, it can't take 6 years. We're going to fall further behind and not make progress for the time it takes projects to get through this. So I'm excited for the ripple effect this could have on land use codes that enable more of this to come to the market and make it more investment feasible. And I think Fort Collins has just done that. And I think having that code in there is essential to realizing the value of 123. I think if this land use code is repealed, which there's, I think, an effort to do that, we'd be taking a step back. And I think we had overwhelming support for Prop 123. I think at a state level, it may be passed a normal margin, but I think in our county, we had a tremendous amount of support for it in the 60-70% in what I saw in polling. And so here are people saying they want affordable housing. And Fort Collins is enabling that with the land use code. And I'm just scared that a repeal effort, people won't make that connection, that 123, in order to utilize that, this land use code is essential for it. So anyway, that's where I'm excited for, is that long-term impact that as cities look to modify their land use code and enable more of this.
Great.
And
thank
Landon,
you.
you're exactly right on that with the need for speed, so to speak. The need to get these done quicker. So I'm happy to see that 6 years didn't do anything to affect your hair follicles, though, as it did Joe and I probably many years ago.
Yeah, there are other impacts. I'll spare everybody,
Thank you. Natalie, do you want to just offer a little bit about what the Division of Housing, how you're going to be playing in this space?
Sure. Thank you so much. Nice to meet everybody. My name is Natalie Woke, and I'm a housing development specialist with the Division of Housing, covering Northern Colorado. So yeah, thank you for allowing me to introduce myself. So as we've been talking about, traditionally, the Division of Housing has served AMIs at 60% and under, because most or all of the funding sources that we've had access to have been federal. However, with our state funding sources, for example, HDG and other state funding sources, we have flexibility to go up to 80% AMI in urban areas. And then with some of these new programs that are coming online that were passed by the state legislature this year, we have flexibility to go up to 120%, 140% AMI and urban areas for homeownership projects. And those NOFAs have not been published yet. The 1304 NOFA is expected to be published imminently, any day now. And then the other one, the 159, that's the revolving loan fund, that one should be published within the next few months. So please reach out to me if you have a project and you'd like to know more about how to access these funds. I'm going to pop my my contact info into the chat here.
That'd be great. Thanks so much, Natalie. And Cecilia, you had a question about AMI. I'm not sure if I quite understand what your direction was. So if you could unmute and just pose your question. Okay. Well, I'll take a shot at it. But the question was, what's the lowest AMI for the new developments? So Landon, I think you said your price points on that product was going to be in the 400 to 450.
Yeah, our community in Bloom, through our partnership with PEDCOR, or sale of a LIHTC deal to PEDCOR, will serve all the way down to 30% AMI. In theirs, and then through our partnership with Habitat, Kristen may be able to answer this, but I think we're in the 60 to 80 for most of our home buyers, but I don't know what the bottom end of, if there is a bottom end of AMI that Habitat traditionally works with, but it's usually in that 60 to 80% AMI. So.
Great, thank you. So Terry, I think you brought along some slides to just show a little bit about your products. Do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, let me share here real quick. All right, is that showing up okay?
Not seeing it.
Okay. I guess I have the wrong screen here. Sorry, Joe, technical difficulties.
Nope, I apologize. I should have had it up on my screen just in case.
Well, for those of you that don't know me, I don't mind filling space when there's a gap. Kristen from Habitat for Humanity. I just wanted to echo Landon that typically we serve that 60 to 80% AMI. We will be selecting home buyers very soon. And so I'm going to put a link in the chat box But also just with this forum, I would love to say that the collaboration between the Odell family donating land and Hartford Homes donating the development of the land, we will likely be able to go below 60% AMI going forward at that development next to Odell Brewing.
Fantastic. Thanks, Kristen. So Terry, we can see your screen now.
Okay, excellent. So yeah, just a few slides on our program. We have, again, it's low-cost mezzanine debt is what it really is. It works well with Freddie and Fannie because they have this requirement for a public or mission-driven investment. They need, I think, 10% of the capital involved, and this works really well. We originate our loans. We work with other CDFIs and others to try to sell participations in it to try to keep our portion. I think originally we were trying to keep our portion to about $1 million, or, per transaction, but that really hasn't worked out that way. But we have sold some participations to folks like Impact Development Fund and Mercy Community Capital. All right, next slide. So this is just a pie showing basically the deal structure. So you have HUD, Fannie Mae, or Freddie Mac, or some like a bank. Our Estes Park deal that we worked on was smaller. It was 26 units, and Bank of Colorado was the senior lender on it, and Chapa provided a little over $1 million in that mezzanine debt. So you have equity, private equity sources. These are typically different from like tax credit equity sources, and these are private equity investors that are looking for return from cash flow, and then usually like a liquidation event or a refinance at about year 6 or 7. And that's how they make their returns on it.
Great.
Basic terms of our financing, again, second deed of trust, interest rate is 5 to 6%. We do have an exit fee. It ends up being about 3% of our loan amount. It's evolved from an equity kicker to an exit fee to now just, I think we're just still calling it an exit fee, but it's a percentage of our loan amount is what it comes down to. We do have affordability requirements again, but it's 80% to 120%, which meet our statutory minimums. And I think other than that, I had a couple of, there it is, a little bit more. Lesser of 90% of value of or cost of a minimum 115 debt cover on all must pay debt. We, like I said, had flexibility on it. So in some cases it's only in during construction, and then it gets paid off at the time the project stabilizes and converts to perm, or it can stay in. Generally, we no more than 15 years because we want to try to recycle the money, as much as we can. Then I had a couple of example projects in here that we've done. This one, Elevated Pena Station, was 216 units. It was almost a $40 million project, and so our amount in it was a $4 million deal. It was 3 years interest only at 6%, and then the loan paid in full as soon as the project was complete. And then the Estes Park deal that we did, again, 26 units. We did it with the housing authority was involved, 80 to 120%. It was a smaller project, 7.6 million in costs, and our piece was $1.05 million. We used 3.5% interest on this one because of the housing authority's involvement. Again, flexibility, interest only during 24-month construction, principal and interest for 8 years thereafter. So basically we're giving them 10 years total between the construction and the perm period. And it's based on a 40-year AM schedule. So makes their payments pretty affordable. So
Great. Well, thank you, Terry. And I will say this is a really key piece because in a traditional market rate development, typically you're going to be financing about somewhere between 60 and maybe as much as 75% of the project. And then the rest of that would have to be equity that needs to come in from private sources that are looking for anywhere from about a 9 to a 16, 17% internal rate of return, which is why those rents tend to be so high, because they're trying not only to cover the cost of the debt that they are bringing in, but then also make sure their investors get a reasonable return for the risk that they take. So when CHAFA and the Division of Housing and CDFIs, when they step in to provide some of that debt, They can provide it under terms that certainly are less expensive than private equity because you're going to be paying an interest rate that's far lower than what the investors are looking for. But again, it also limits the amount of capital that a private investor needs to go out and raise. So it can be a quicker process for some, and in a lot of cases, it reduces that overall debt load, which is what allows the in sales price or the rent to fall into those 80 to 120% buckets. There was a question in the chat. Looks like several people jumped on it, just asking what the AMI is for Northern Colorado. So in Larimer County, it's about 76,000. In Weld County, it's a little bit lower, 74,000, right in there. Just to give you a frame of reference, when we talk about area median income, that's the 100% number. And then you would just do your calculation, percentage calculation based on that. And so let's see, I think we've got a few more minutes left. Just checking the chat to make sure I haven't missed anybody that has questions. Looks like if you haven't done so, please jump into the chat and you can get information from Kristen that she's put in, and as well as Natalie's contact information. And then if you want further information on the income limits in the region, we've got Landon and Sue both provided some information there. So let me just circle back around. One of the concerns that we've heard, and I know Greeley has updated their land use code, and then Loveland, I believe, is still working on theirs. But one of the pushback issues that we've heard is that there's concern about how existing neighborhoods might be changed by allowing greater density in neighborhoods. And I don't know, Terry, how much you would be able to speak to that, but if you do, please, based on your experience in other communities. But Landon, help me understand that. So is there a concern that there's economic incentive to replace existing units with multiple units, whether it's a duplex or a townhome type product? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm perfectly going to answer it because most of what we do is greenfield. But I alluded to it a little bit earlier, is I think a reality of when there is redevelopment in Fort Collins, at least, isn't going to be able to happen at tremendous scale. There's just not that many opportunities. And then when that redevelopment happens, there's a lot of costs that are unique to redevelopment that aren't experienced in greenfield. So the ability, any ways to control that and deliver that at a more affordable price, I think is what the land use code can enable, versus, but maybe the best I can answer that is I don't think there's going to be an apartment building on every corner with the land use code modifications that have come through. It's when those scenarios happen, there's going to be a lot more creativity in order to maximize the housing stock to serve this missing middle and other needs in the community. But I don't think it's going to create significant economic incentives that accelerate a whole bunch of redevelopment by any means. I don't know if that's really what you're inquiring about, but
no, yeah, just was looking at the feasibility, and again, Terry, you may or may not again have the detailed understanding of what has gone on. The west side of Denver, they opened that up to ADU development, and to my knowledge, there hasn't been much activity under that, simply because the cost that's associated with putting in additional dwelling units. But can you speak to that? Is that something that we should all be concerned about in terms of allowing more dense development across all residential zones? Does that really lead to greater density in existing neighborhoods?
Well, it's a great question. It's a great question. I know what you're talking about is West Denver Renaissance Collaborative. that was really pushing for the ADUs, and there's, zoning has allowed for that, and it's allowing it in a lot of other places too. And it's, allowing those, what I've heard is that, yeah, there's difficulty in placing homes, there's cost involved that's prohibitive. There hasn't been as much activity in West Denver as we had hoped. But hopefully they're doing some restructuring or figuring out some equity sources to maybe help that, because I think that's what's needed is, some subsidy of some kind, even with single family construction, with projects that we're financing. It costs more to build than you want to sell these for, than you need to sell these for to be affordable. And so, how does it look? I mean, I don't know exactly how it looks as far as, creating more density. It seems like there's mixed messages, in my opinion, on, sort of like density is sort of what the planners know needs to happen in terms of having, walkability and having people live where they work and so forth. But I read an article recently was about how the West, was developed with wide open space, right? And so there's a mindset there that's like, we don't want more density. We want wide open space. We want our space. And so hard to tell. It's a mindset, and would take a long time to change, I think.
Yeah,
I might just build on that if I can, Joe. I mean, I think
please.
you're right. It's a mindset that is hard to change. But I think people need to truly answer the question of what they value and what their values are. If we value access to housing for everyone, and we value environmental sustainability, where we aren't forcing people to commute in from a long ways and stimulating fossil fuels in that way, if we're serious about that, then we have to look at density. We have to accept the trade-offs of higher traffic volumes, and Fort Collins can't look the same way it did in 1999 when this land use code was developed, or the last 30-40 years. And if people value more that space and preserving their current way of life, that's a fine decision. But I think what people miss is you can't have both. And if you're choosing that, I think you are choosing exclusivity in our community. And I also think you're choosing a less environmentally sustainable path. And again, that may be people's choice, but I don't think there's always that connection that's made. And personally, I would love to see the accessibility to housing and us be serious about our climate action goals over talking a lot about it and not willing to make the hard trade-offs that a good revised land use code and some real intentionality will drive towards. I'm born and raised here, been in Fort Collins and see it grow and change, and that, yeah, there's trade-offs to that. Absolutely. But I think trying to preserve it just the way it is not practical and has significant impacts on our community. So that's my soapbox. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's
right,
trade-offs. If you're driving to where you can afford, then you're spending more on transportation costs. And so between the two of them, then you're spending more, environmentally, it's just not doing well.
Thank you. Well, gentlemen, both, I thank you both for joining us today. We are at, we're now at 11:31, so I'm already behind schedule. But I hope that everyone got something out of this conversation. I think this was really helpful to hear from folks that actually know what they're talking about, and not just me, because I'm really just here for good looks. At any rate, I do thank all of you for joining us today, and I do invite you to get in touch with us, get in touch with me if you have suggestions on topics that you would like to see us discuss at a future presentation. We do these once a quarter, and I will put my information in the chat. You will also, for anybody who registered, you will be receiving a link that will have not only a recording of this session, but it'll have the materials that Landon and Terry shared with us, along with contact information. So look forward to seeing that in your email box. And again, I'll thank everyone for joining us, and hope to see you again at our next session after the first of the year. So thank you
everyone.
much.
Thanks, guys.
So Joe, there's no talent competition?
That'll be next time.
Okay, perfect.